the proper Greek term is deification, is to become godlike, to become like God. And the most scandalous of all statements is St. Paul. Is that and picked up by many of the church fathers, is God became man so that men might become gods. And I thought it'd be great to use that terminology in Utah, for obvious reasons. Because I think sometimes here in particular, we tend to identify ourselves how we're not Mormons, and we shouldn't do that. That's the wrong way of being a Catholic. In the South, often Catholics will identify themselves as not Southern Baptists or whatnot, right? But if we believe what we truly believe about the faith, about the church, about everything related to God becoming man, then there is no comparison. That's why, as Catholics, we don't call ourselves a denomination. The term denomination does not apply. So because we are the church, not a church, not church, but the church, simply. And so there's no proper comparison. So I just kind of want to throw that out as kind of the starting point of what we're talking about, because this very topic of divine election, of justification, of sanctification, is what has caused many of the great divisions in Christianity. It is the central division between us and the Protestants. And I would actually argue that it is actually the central division between us and the Orthodox as well, but at different points. And I'll explain that as we kind of go along. So part of this is I want to kind of have a dialogue with you guys. I could lecture for days on this topic, on one of these topics. 3 hours is not enough time. Because this goes into the very central mysteries of the faith. Actually, except for the incarnation. We don't have to worry so much about the incarnation. Just the fact that it happened is enough for us to forge ahead. Because it is the incarnation that allows for all this to be possible. Well, at least the last two parts. Because election existed before. And in some ways, justification existed before the Christian dispensation. When I use that term, Christian dispensation, that's the time after the ascension of the Lord. So when we start getting precise about these things, we break up the incarnation, the birth, the hidden years, the preaching ministry, the earthly ministry, the passion as a whole, the passion, the death, the resurrection, the ascension, Pentecost. All these things are spoken about distinctly, and each one of them does something different to us. So what I'm going to kind of get us to think is not about any of these specific events yet. We'll touch on them. But when we talk about the Christian dispensation, it's not the time after the crucifixion, not the time after the resurrection, it's the time after the ascension. After the ascension. So, and yeah, even before Pentecost. So, the ascension on. So, so with that in mind, let's got the risen Jesus there because he's awesome. And to give kind of a brief overview, really, of what these things are, let me just define terms. Election is God choosing you. Justification is God healing you, effectively, making you pleasing, is the way it's put. Through justification, you are made pleasing to God, which has a very interesting implication that we don't think about. And I'll discuss that. And it might help our prayer lives, it might help our spiritual lives, but it might help our day-to-day lives, and it also might help us, well, if we do it the right way, if we understand what I'm going to discuss about that the right way, then it'll actually draw us closer to the Lord. If not, if it's not taken the right way, and I do a poor job of expressing it, then it actually might draw you away from the Lord. So let's. So if anything I say starts pushing you away from the Lord, talk to me about it. Like, address it in conversation. So always interrupt me whenever you have an opportunity to, or you have a thought. Just raise your hand or don't. It doesn't matter. So election is God choosing you. Justification is God making you pleasing to him. And sanctification is God making you holy. And then there's another stage, which is glorification, which is the completion of that in heaven. And that is the becoming, or that is the, becoming is the right word, because that's the cool thing about heaven, is that it's inexhaustible. And so you're always becoming in heaven. It's not a static place. So, that you have been glorified. Your crown has been given to you. And so, did anyone notice something about all of those stages? Like, there's something in common about all of those stages. Yeah, you hit that right on the head. It's just not something we do. And that's important. We're not Pelagians. Though the Protestants think we're Pelagians, we're not Pelagians, which means we can't earn our salvation. There's not a single act that we can do that will cause us to earn our salvation. Matter of fact, we could be the best human being on the face of the planet and still go to hell. There's nothing that we can do on our part to affect salvation. And that's a hard thing to hear, because we're used to merits and demerits, right? We're used to gold stars and smiley faces that your teacher gives you in school, right? So, you win the spelling bee and you get a gold star, right? It doesn't work that way in the divine dispensation. It's gratuitous, it's gift, it's pure gift. That's what grace is. Grace, roughly translated, is gift. So the possibility of our salvation, the very possibility of it, is gift. Just like our own lives. Our natural lives are gift, our spiritual lives are gift. The possibility of salvation is a gift. The very ability to conceive of it in our minds is a gift. It's all gift. Now, that can be taken too far, and then we start saying, that grace, we're swimming in a sea of grace. Now, that's not what I'm saying. There is a distinction between the natural order that we're living in and the divine order, divine dispensation. And that's important. We'll talk about that too. Is that it's important. We'll see. So the question is, what's the problem, right? So what are the problem that we're trying to deal with? The problem is, well, let me ask. What do you think the problem is? Like, okay, so if we know what the topic is how God affects salvation in us, then what is the problem? Kind of touched on it tangentially.
Yeah. Like, why isn't everybody saved then?
Right.
Like, what distinguishes like a Christian from a non-Christian?
I'd even say go back even before that. Even before that.
Why did God choose the Jews?
Even before that.
Talking about the separation from God?
Yeah. It all goes back to the beginning. It all goes back to Adam and Eve. So this is Fra Angelico, blessed Fra Angelico fresco of the casting of Adam and Eve out of the garden. And traditionally that's my guy up there. That's the angel Gabriel with the fiery sword, keeping all of us out of heaven. So kind of like that. In the Old Testament, in the New Testament, Gabriel is noted as like comfort and compassion and all these other things, right? In the Old Testament, he's the one that destroys everything. Like he's the angel of God's power. That's what Gabriel means, is God's strength, God's power, virtue of God. And And so he's the one that destroys Sodom and Gomorrah. He's the one that guards the Garden